Hi guys, welcome back to Forgetful Scholar, and this week we're going to chat about one book. I'm still in the one book slump. I don't know what's going on, but I just here we are, I guess. I want to get back up to 2 books, but I promised myself that when I was doing, working on the channel, I was like, I promised myself that I wouldn't speed through books just to get it done by a deadline, because I want to enjoy them. So yeah, once again, 1 book. I don't know what's happening. Maybe I'm busier than usual or lazier than usual. I do know, well, I've been having headaches lately and that's kind of been contributing, but it is what it is. So this week is a 4-star. It is a contemporary paranormal romance, and it is A Road Trip with a Vampire, My Vampires, Book 3 by Jenna Levine. Now, this just came out. It was published 2025 and it's 380 pages. This was pretty much a 5-star until the 3rd act. And then it went down a star for me. I did have a great time. If you like what they do in the shadows, this book definitely has that type of humor, especially when it comes to the bad guys, the collective. And yeah, the bad guys, the collective, do make a resurgence in this book. Now, the second book in the series is 5 stars, still my favorite. The collective was introduced with vampire Reggie, who's, Reggie, I love him. Basically, an incompetent group of elder vampires that want Reggie to pay for killing their sires, but Reggie didn't do it. Zelda the Terrible did it, and this book is all about her. So Reggie and Zelda were best friends for centuries, right? She is a witch. She's not a vampire. She's a witch, and I like how they explain her immortality as, I don't know. I was like, any other book I would be beyond peeved of just like the plot hole, but somehow this fits with this kind of sillier, more tongue-in-cheek vampire lore, right? She's like, I have no idea why I don't age past 30, and I was like, okay, that works. In this specific context, in this specific world building, this works. This is also the same world where Reggie is, his prized possession is a painting of Edward Cullen from Twilight that has sparkles in it, so the light hits it, it sparkles. So, okay, and the same world where apparently we learned in this book that Diet Coke gets vampires drunk. So that's why I wasn't mad at this plot hole. I was like, oh, it's not really a plot hole. It just kind of makes sense in this sort of universe. It's like, oh yeah, of course. So that means there are probably other witches that are out there that just don't age. And it just works. It's funny, it's silly, and it works. Okay, so the 2 main characters are Zelda the Terrible, or Zelda Turt, as she goes by now, and Peter Elliot. Peter Elliot is a very serious vampire. He's very serious for reasons he does not know because he has amnesia. And he runs into Reggie at a scrapbooking convention, and Reggie's like, hey, I'm gonna send you out to my best friend Zelda. She's in California. She'll probably help you. And Zelda's like, what the heck? Why did you send this vampire out to me? I'm trying to get away from all that. How dare you? And he's like, oopsies, too late. It doesn't hurt that Peter apparently is gorgeous. Zelda runs a yoga studio in, I think it's Northern California, it sounded like. And she's left her manic pixie days behind her, and I will say, okay, this is why it didn't affect my star rating, because I realized that was a misconception going into it, because the back of the book clearly shows a different avenue the writer was going with Zelda, right? Because of Reggie and Zelda's best friends and for centuries, and then like all these practical jokes that like hurt people and stuff. I kind of pictured her POV to be more manic or more like chaotic. But the back of the book clearly states that she left all that behind her. She's trying to be like a kinder, calmer, responsible person, right? So that was my own misconception going into it. But even with that, I still enjoyed myself. And you guys know I hate first person POVs. I hate it so much. I hate first person, the writing stuff. I hate it. But all three of these books are first person, and I really like them. Like, I think the first book got like a 3 or 4, the second book got a 5, and this book got a 4. So take that. Like, that's how charming the stories are, that even the first person that drives me nuts, the books are still charming. Trying something new with my hair, and I don't think I like it. It keeps distracting me. I'm like, that's not what I want. No, I don't want. Anyway, okay. Sorry, got distracted. Okay. We are mostly in Zelda's point of view. Like, there's maybe 2-3 times we're in Peter's. So Peter ends up at her studio. And I like that Zelda's like, yeah, you're hot, but like, I don't trust you, buddy. Yeah, I do like that, because that made sense to me. Also, you know, you should always be like that with strangers, like, you know, especially since she knew he was a vampire, right? And even though she adores Reggie, most vampires she knows are not Reggie. Reggie's the special snowflake, you know what I mean? Everybody else, she kind of thinks they're jerks. Okay, so he ends up in the studio, and he has no memory, and she believes him, and then stuff is happening with her magic. So this is really, really fun, and I really enjoyed this. Her magic, okay? So she left it behind because at one point she was doing a practical joke. See, that's the thing with her and Reggie and the group of bad vampires they were hanging out with. They always classified stuff as practical jokes. I'm not one for practical jokes, so I probably already had like a kind of feel about practical jokes being played in books and things like that. But she did a practical joke that kind of opened her eyes because something really bad happened. And it's not the fire she set that killed the collective's vampire daddies. No, that's not. She was like, they were jerks, they deserved it. And I was like, Zelda, just when I think I'm not gonna like you, I do. You go and think something like that, and I'm like, oop, she's on the board, fellas. I like her. So, but something else happens, and I don't want to give too much away because it just came out, and you know, it's a fun book. You guys should definitely check it out. Something happens and opens her eyes. I'm like, yeah, that would, yep. I will say, for contemporary romance, there was a lot of pop culture references, and the thing about that's fine, you know, now when those pop culture references make sense, but like, isn't the author worried later on, like in 20 years, 30 years, that's just gonna date the book? But anyway, I mean, that was just a throwaway thought I had when I was reading it. I was like, oh, there's a lot of, you know, stuff that's probably not going to be relevant in like 30 years or 10 years, or heck, the way everything's going, maybe 2 years. Maybe like how fast the cycles are, pop culture cycles now, maybe 2 years it won't be relevant. Anyway, so her magic, because she's not using it anymore because of what happened, and she wants to, almost like in recovery, like almost like an AA program she did for herself, almost like recovering from it. And we've seen these before, how magic is like into drug use or alcoholism, and it's a metaphor for, you know, putting back to your life together without this crutch. And I've seen it before, but I don't hate it because I haven't seen it enough to get tired of it, because it does feel like lately a lot of books are just like cut and paste, you know. But this, I always, when it's done right, I always like these allegories, you know, when it comes to the paranormal beings, creatures, people, you know, I like these allegories. It's time honored, really. So if she doesn't, but every night she has to use a little bit of her magic, because she shit starts to happen. Like her magic starts to go out of her control. And like, for example, she went to bed, and because what was going on with her horniness towards Peter and her fighting it, they are definitely like attracted at first sight, but they don't just bone, which I appreciate. There's like, they get to know each other before the sexy parts happen. Because I don't really like when characters just jump into, because that's not a romance, you know what I mean? It's just not. Anyway, she forgot to do like her nightly ritual of lighting candles with her magic, and she woke up, her curtains were on fire. And it was just a normal fire. It was magic fire, blue fire, so it's really hard for her to put it out. And she realizes her magic is getting a little bit more out of control. So a little bit more out of control, that's not a sentence, that is correct. Anyway, she kind of has to use a little bit of it every day, or she gets like the shakes, and it's wildly out of her control. That's a better sentence. I like that better. Anyway, and she's a very powerful elemental witch. That's her power base: fire, wind, things like that. She does have tools to help her in a pinch, especially since she used to run with vampires, you know, and it's not always easy for her to like lightning strike, you know. So and I do like that she's that powerful, because like the vampires fear her, and they named her Grisella the Terrible, you know. So I kind of like that, you know. Now her reputation is very different than who she is, and that's like, after I read the book I was like, okay, yeah, because I thought in one situation she would act differently because of the reputation, but from the beginning the author has been telling us this is actually how she is, and it's different than what people think. So I was kind of annoyed at her for a choice she made, but then I was like, no, wait, no, that makes sense. The book has been telling me that from the beginning. That absolutely makes sense. That's me falling for the vampire propaganda and not actually listening to the author when they're telling me who the person was. So, and that did not count in me knocking down a star. Okay, that. So don't fall into that little pit hole that I fell into. You know, keep in mind who the author is telling you Zelda is, right? So she has to practice more magic. She has to find a better balance, because lighting candles with her fire is not cutting it anymore, and she could hurt people in her studio. She's made a couple really close human friends, and she's worried she'll hurt them. So she's like, okay, I gotta get away, go to somewhere remote where I could like experiment and see how much magic I have to put out every night, so I don't actually set the house on fire. And Peter, he has this journal that's his handwriting, but Amnesia, and he travels a lot, very mysterious jobs. Again, like in the other books, there's little excerpts from like letters or journals, correspondence, which are letters, newspaper articles, that's what I'm thinking of, a little bit about Zelda's past, a little bit about Peter's past, and Peter's past is draped in mystery. The beginning, close to the end of the second act, I was like, oh, okay, that's what's going on. Okay, fine. And I was right. A little disappointed in that the other two books was very tropey, and you kind of knew where the story was going, but at the end, but like right when you think you know how the conflict would be resolved, the author twists it a little bit, and it gets resolved correctly. It gets resolved, but it gets resolved in like kind of a fresh, fun little way, and it's usually the girl that does it, you know. And those like in book 2, Amelia saves the day, saves Reggie from the collective because she's an accountant, and she threatens the collective with taxes, which is hysterical, and I loved it. So, you know, kind of like that. Like in the first book when the vampire was it Reginald? Reggie's the second one. The first vampire, I forget his name. Ferdinand? Was it Ferdinand? Anyway, he got captured, and Reggie and Cassie, I believe the girl's name was, they saved the day in a fun little way. So I was like kind of expecting that. that didn't happen. It kind of went on as, you know, pretty beat for beat. And I was like, oh, that's a little disappointing. Again, that's not where it dropped down a star, right? I was a little disappointed, tiny bit, because this author's so good at like, oh, you thought I was gonna do this? You thought I was gonna fix it with number 1? Oh, I fixed it with number 1.5. And that's just a little twist that made it fun, right? So unfortunately that didn't happen. But what it knocked down, the third act conflict, we see a little bit of the action. You guys know there's gonna be action. Put it on the page or I get annoyed. So I was like, oh, only a little bit on the page? That's not fun. And then the third act resolution took way too long. It took like 3-4 chapters. And like, I didn't really understand why Zelda was so upset. It would have made more sense to me if, because we're in Zelda's POV, if just one thought, and I would have been like, okay, I get you, girl, that she was holding on to this supposed offense to keep emotional distance from her and Peter, because she, you know, maybe because falling in love after 400 years scares her. If that thought was put in at any point on those 3 chapters, I would have been like, oh girl, I got you, I understand, and it would have stayed 5 stars. It just kind of, now the resolution is good. It's good, it's sweet, happy ending, I love that. Just took a little bit, longer than I thought it would. And that thought process wasn't, Zelda didn't have that thought. So I was like, oh, that kind of feels disproportionate to what happened, you know? And it kind of had the feel, now I don't know if this is true or not, it's just kind of, sometimes you could feel when an author's having fun writing something when they don't. And the third act resolution just kind of felt like that was written first, and almost the story was written to match it, if that makes sense. Because it was a little, there's some things that it, like, sure, a square and a square hole, but like, oh, the edges are a little off. Like, there was just something a little off about it. And that's the only reason it got knocked down to 4 stars, because something was a little off. But happy ending, I liked when the resolution actually happened. I liked it. The collective, idiots, but they actually were a little bit more intimidating in this book because they're incompetent, but in this book they hired a very competent person to do their bidding. So that's where it kind of made them a little bit more of a threat, which was interesting, you know? And on their road trip, because she wants to go somewhere remote to practice her magic, he wants to visit these places to get his memory back, and then he's getting these threatening notes to meet him right outside of Chicago. So they decided for a road trip. And I do like the road trip. I thought at one point they're gonna do force one bed, but they didn't. And I was like, okay, that's fun. I like that you didn't, because it's too early for that. It's too early for that. This is like page 50, girl, take your time. Build the tension. And I liked the tension that was built. I wish we were in Peter's head a little bit more, because it was obvious he liked her from the beginning. Just to get a little bit more of that angst, but that's fine. Zelda held on to her hurt feelings a little longer than I thought was warranted, I guess. Like I said, it just, something was a little, but the ending was very sweet. Was very, very sweet. So it's definitely a 4 stars. I'm really enjoying this new author. And, you know, a controversial opinion, but I like these covers. Like, I don't like other illustrated covers because they look very cartoony to me. These covers remind me more of graphic novels and like pop art than cartoons. I know it's a weird distinction, but it's a distinction that is important to me, okay? And so I kind of like these more comic book pop art-y covers as opposed to, you know, the cartoon covers that we see all the time in romance novels now. If more romance novels had these kind of pop arty comic book style covers, I don't think I would be so annoyed. Maybe I would. Maybe too much of it I would be still annoyed. Where my clutch covers, you know what I mean? Anyway, so 4 stars. I'm loving this author. I had a blast. It's I'm really liking this world. I love that this world is like vampires and people are dying serious, and then I turn around like Diet Coke makes vampires drunk. You know, like it's it has this great not serious kind of vibe to it, and I enjoy it, and it feels like the author likes writing it. I just hope they don't fall into the trope of like writing books too fast, where then all of a sudden it just doesn't seem like the book had enough attention from the author. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's a discussion for another time. I don't want to, but it's time for me to get back to the real world. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.